Tonight's story isn't just messy celebrity tea. It's the kind of allegation that can detonate careers, friendships, and entire reputations overnight. Because right now, one name is sitting in the center of a storm that's getting uglier by the minute. Teyana Taylor. And the person making the claims? Tasha K. A voice known for lighting matches and walking away while the room burns. What's being discussed isn't confirmed, it isn't diagnosed, and it isn't proven. But the way it's being framed is exactly why people are panicking. We're talking alleged documents, off-the-record test talk, whispered warnings, and claims that certain people may have been pulled into something they didn't fully understand until it was too late.
Or was it a relationship? Here's the thing. I know TT got upset with me when I said that she was too clingy. It was given too much too soon.
And once the conversation shifts from relationship drama to possible risk, the whole game changes. Because now it's not about who dated who. It's about who knew what, when they knew it, and who might be quietly trying to keep it from ever reaching daylight. And when names like Iman Shumpert, Pierre, Kanye West, and even Leonardo DiCaprio get dragged into the orbit of the rumors, that's when Hollywood stops laughing and starts calling lawyers. Tonight, brace yourself, because this isn't the usual celebrity he said, she said. This is the kind of allegation that turns an industry paranoid, makes phones ring in the middle of the night, and forces people to start watching what they say on camera. The name sitting at the center of the chaos is Teyana Taylor, and the person pushing the conversation into overdrive is Tasha K. Somebody known for taking what's whispered behind closed doors and blasting it into the public like it's breaking news. Now let's be clear, nothing in this story is confirmed. No diagnosis is verified. No medical condition is proven here. This is all alleged commentary, yet people are reacting so hard because of how the claims are being framed.
All I'm saying is that I felt like it was forced. I felt like she was way too clingy, too soon. You just got out of a nasty, very public divorce. And I feel like he was just rebounding.
When a rumor is packaged as private relationship drama, the internet treats it like entertainment. But when it's packaged like possible risk, the energy shifts instantly. People stop laughing. People start calculating. People start asking questions that don't have easy answers. And according to the way Tasha K tells it, this isn't some random rumor that popped up overnight. She frames it like something that's been circulating quietly for years, passed around in coded conversations, hinted at in private rooms, and supposedly protected by silence. She claims the entertainment world runs on image management, paperwork, and mutual protection. In her narrative, the public gets the clean version, while the messy version gets buried under NDAs, legal warnings, and "you didn't hear that from me." Then she drops the alleged bomb, that there's been a serious health-related secret connected to Teyana Taylor, and the most disturbing part, according to this telling, isn't the condition itself. It's the silence. The implication that certain people who should have been informed allegedly weren't. And once that insinuation hits the air, the story stops being about headlines and starts being about trust, consent, and consequences. From there, the timeline shifts to Teyana's post-divorce chapter with Iman Shumpert. Tasha paints it like a fragile era, emotionally raw, freshly out of a very public split, trying to move forward fast. And when someone is in that state, they don't always make slow, careful decisions. They make fast ones. They chase distractions. They chase company. They chase anything that keeps them from sitting alone with reality. That's where Pierre enters the narrative, and this is where the internet really starts dividing, because Tasha K doesn't present this connection like a calm, stable romance. She frames it like rebound energy, too much too soon, like something that looked good on the timeline but wasn't built on real stability. And she pushes the idea that what people saw publicly may have served a purpose: attention, distraction, and a fresh storyline at the exact moment the old storyline was getting uncomfortable. In her version, Pierre isn't just a guy she dated. He's framed like someone emotionally different, newer to the spotlight, less hardened by industry games, more attached, more sensitive. And that matters because she suggests that when it ended, his reaction seemed messy, needy, confused, like somebody who got pulled into something they didn't fully understand until it was already happening. Now, whether that's fair or not, it's part of the narrative she's selling, that Aaron may have been emotionally invested while Teyana was allegedly operating in survival mode, moving fast, staying busy, and avoiding anything that would force real questions into the open. And then the story goes from messy to dangerous, because Tasha's allegations start pointing backward, to Iman Shumpert. She implies, without saying it outright, that the divorce may not have been only about cheating or relationship issues. She frames it like fear played a role. Fear of what might have happened, fear of what could come out, fear of what could be connected later. And once you frame a breakup as fear-driven, you basically invite the audience to assume the worst, even without proof. After that, the scope widens. Tasha's story implies other connections, other names, other circles, suggesting this isn't isolated, it's a pattern. She mentions Kanye West in the orbit of the rumors, and she even goes as far as throwing out Leonardo DiCaprio's name as an example of how high the alleged web could reach if the accusations were true. And this is exactly how a situation turns into an internet monster. Not because evidence grows, but because the list of names grows. And once the list grows, the pressure grows. Because now it's not just one celebrity trying to protect an image, it's multiple teams, multiple brands, multiple reputations that could get hit by association alone. Even being mentioned in the same conversation can create a cloud that follows somebody for months. That's when Tasha starts describing what she frames as Hollywood containment. In her telling, the industry doesn't confront explosive issues publicly, it contains them privately. Quiet meetings, crisis calls, lawyers moving faster than reporters, narratives being redirected before the public even knows the real question to ask. And she suggests that instead of letting the public focus on anything health-related, the safer storyline becomes relationship drama. Cheating rumors, personality clashes, they just grew apart. Anything that keeps fans debating love, lives, instead of asking deeper questions. Because in this story, the scariest thing isn't the gossip. It's the idea that people with power can shape what the public talks about. That they can flood the timeline with a new romance, a new headline, a new viral moment, while the most uncomfortable questions stay buried. So by the time this chapter ends, one thing is clear. This isn't being framed as a cute scandal anymore. It's being framed like a potential industry crisis. A situation where everyone is watching what gets said next. Because once a rumor turns into a public concern narrative, there's no clean way to undo the damage. Now the story turns into the part Hollywood hates the most. Because this is where the allegations stop sounding like messy dating and start sounding like full crisis protocol. Tasha K's framing in this chapter is basically this. Once the Aaron-Pierre situation cooled off, it didn't end quietly because people were mature. In her telling, it ended like a switch got flipped, fast, cold, and strategic. And when something ends that abruptly in celebrity culture, it usually means one of two things. Either somebody found out something they can't unknow, or somebody's team stepped in and shut it down before it could turn into a public disaster. And here's where the image protection angle becomes the main storyline. According to how Tasha K narrates it, this is the moment where Teyana allegedly shifts into what you could call brand survival mode. Not just moving on emotionally, but moving on publicly in a way that controls the timeline. Because the internet doesn't just watch what you do. It watches when you do it, how you do it, and what you conveniently distract them with while you do it. So in this version of events, the breakup isn't the end. It's the beginning of damage control. Tasha's narrative suggests that after Aaron-Pierre, there was an effort to reshape how people saw him. Not with a public smear campaign, not with a big interview, not with a direct statement. More subtle than that. The kind of soft narrative shift that happens when access gets controlled, when invitations dry up, when certain rooms stop opening, when people who used to call you back suddenly miss your call. And when that happens, the public doesn't think someone is being managed. They think, oh, maybe he's the problem. Because if you can make the other person look unstable, clingy, obsessive, or emotionally messy, then the real conversation never has to happen. The public stays focused on personality, not on allegations. And that's what makes this segment feel so calculated in the way it's being told. Like the real objective is to bury the uncomfortable questions under a safer headline. He's just doing too much. And once that narrative starts, the ripple spreads fast. Not because people have proof, but because people love a storyline that explains everything. The moment the internet hears needy, clingy, acting weird, suddenly every clip, every photo, every expression gets reinterpreted like evidence. That's how a person gets turned into a character. And once you're a character, the truth barely matters anymore, only the role you've been assigned. Now here's where Tasha pushes it even further. She frames Hollywood as a system that doesn't wait for confirmation. It responds to risk. Because in the entertainment business, the most expensive thing isn't a rumor. It's uncertainty. If there's even a chance something could become a liability, the machine kicks in. Lawyers don't wait for headlines. Brands don't wait for proof. Studios don't wait for "let's see." They start protecting themselves immediately. And in her story, that's exactly what allegedly happens. She describes this behind-the-scenes atmosphere like panic wearing a suit. Meetings that don't get put on calendars. Calls happening at odd hours. People suddenly becoming unavailable. And she claims the energy wasn't denial, it was fear. Not fear of gossip, but fear of what the gossip could trigger. Because once allegations lean into anything health-related, the stakes multiply. Suddenly, it's not about who cheated. It's about liability, contracts, endorsements, morality clauses, and reputational risk. It's about who knew, who didn't know, and who could claim they should have been told. In Tasha's telling, there's also this concept of a silent quarantine, not in a literal public health announcement type of way, but in a distance way. People stepping back quietly, fewer parties, fewer public mingling moments, less shared space. Because when the room feels risky, Hollywood's first move is to create distance without explaining why. And that's the part that makes audiences lean in. The idea that there were whispers so serious that people allegedly started moving differently. Then she circles back to the biggest accusation thread, the alleged secrecy. Because in her framing, the condition isn't what would destroy people. The alleged silence is what would. She suggests that if a situation exists where people might have been exposed without being informed, then the problem becomes bigger than one celebrity. It becomes systemic. It becomes a conversation about power protecting itself, about reputation being treated like the priority, while regular human consequences get pushed into the shadows. And once you paint it that way, you can see why she keeps returning to Pierre in this narrative. She positions him like the turning point, the person who wasn't hardened enough to just play along if something felt off. The person who might react emotionally instead of politically. The person whose confusion might accidentally reveal that something deeper was happening behind the scenes. And that's why the idea of credibility control becomes so important here. Because if you can lower someone's credibility, you don't have to argue with their truth. You just have to make people doubt them. And the easiest way to make people doubt a man in a celebrity breakup? Label him as emotional, needy, unstable, or obsessed. Then everything he says starts sounding like bitterness instead of warning. That's how you bury a story without ever denying it. Tasha also frames this as a PR tactic Hollywood allegedly uses all the time. Redirect the audience. Flood the timeline with a cleaner topic. Give people something easier to argue about. Because fans debating romance is safer than fans debating risk. Gossip is manageable. Alleged public safety isn't. So instead of the world focusing on what's true, they focus on who's messy. Instead of asking what happened, they ask who played who. And that's the whole point of distraction. Make the public work on the wrong homework. By the end of this chapter, the vibe is clear. Tasha is telling her audience that what looks like a relationship story on the surface might actually be crisis strategy underneath. That the breakup, the narratives, the sudden silence, None of it is random. It's all movement. It's all positioning. And when she says the scariest part is that there are more names and more connections she hasn't even said yet, that's the cliffhanger she's selling. That the map is bigger than fans realize, and the industry is terrified that if one piece cracks, the rest could collapse with it. Now this is where the story hits its ugliest stage, because this is the part where allegations stop sounding like messy timelines and start sounding like an industry-wide alarm. In Tasha K's framing, once the whispers got loud enough, Hollywood didn't react with curiosity. It reacted like an organization protecting itself from a leak that could drown everybody. And that's the key word in this chapter: leak. Because according to this narrative, the alleged danger wasn't just the rumor itself, it was the possibility that private conversations, private precautions, and private actions had been happening behind the scenes. And if the public ever connected those dots, the industry wouldn't be able to play innocent anymore. So now, the situation isn't being treated like a headline problem, it's being treated like a containment problem. Tasha's tone, at least the way this story is shaped, suggests something very specific. That once certain people allegedly got uncomfortable, the response wasn't public accountability. It was private coordination. The kind of coordination where managers talk to managers, agents call agents, lawyers draft language before a question is even asked, and the goal becomes simple: keep the real conversation out of the mainstream. Because the moment the mainstream picks it up, you can't control the framing anymore. And in her story, that's exactly what makes this so explosive. The idea that the industry may have already moved like it was true, even while publicly acting like it was nothing. That's where panic comes from, when behavior behind the scenes doesn't match the calm face shown to the public. Then she pushes the idea that this alleged situation isn't isolated to one relationship or one breakup. She frames it like a chain reaction, like every new connection afterward becomes part of the timeline people will later analyze. Not because anyone can prove anything, but because once the internet smells a pattern, they start turning every photo into evidence and every breakup into a clue. And that's why she keeps returning to the same core theme: secrecy plus power. Because if you're powerful, the rumor isn't the most dangerous part. The most dangerous part is the belief that you can bury consequences. The belief that you can control what people talk about, who gets believed, and what becomes the official story. In this chapter, the alleged official story is still relationship drama, PR romance, rebound behavior, awkward chemistry, emotional mismatch, all the usual digestible celebrity mess. But Tasha frames the unofficial story as something the public isn't supposed to linger on. The idea that the deeper issue is risk, and the industry is terrified of the word risk being attached to a name like Teyana Taylor. Because when risk attaches to a celebrity brand, it doesn't just threaten a relationship. It threatens endorsements, film roles, tour sponsors, contracts, and all the quiet business deals fans never see. And that's why, in this narrative, the reaction is described like emergency mode, not because the internet is loud, but because the money gets nervous. Now she also keeps Pierre positioned as a pressure point. In her framing, Aaron is the type of person whose reaction could accidentally expose the vibe. Not because he's giving interviews, but because his energy, his silence, his withdrawal, his confusion could create questions people weren't asking before. And if you're trying to contain a story, questions are the enemy. So according to this telling, the play isn't to attack directly, it's to reposition. To make sure if Aaron ever becomes the center of attention, people don't see him as credible. They see him as emotional, unstable, needy, the kind of labeling that turns a potential warning into, "Oh, he's just hurt." That's how narratives get neutralized without anyone having to deny anything. Tasha also paints Teyana as constantly moving: projects, travel, appearances, nonstop activity. And she frames that movement like strategy. Like staying busy isn't just ambition, it's avoidance. Because when you slow down, people ask questions. When you pause, stories catch up. But when you flood the timeline with work, photos, and new headlines, the public stays entertained and the deeper conversation struggles to breathe. And in a crisis, breathing room is everything. Then comes the biggest industry claim in this chapter. The idea that people were allegedly quietly advised to take precautions. Not a press conference, not a headline, just discreet behavior, private appointments, quiet conversations, subtle distancing. Again, nothing confirmed. This is simply the way the narrative is being shaped. But it matters because it suggests that insiders weren't acting like it was just gossip. They were acting like it could be real. And that's why the story gets framed as bigger than Teyana alone, bigger than Aaron alone, bigger than Iman alone. Because when Tasha tosses out the possibility that the alleged web extends beyond partners, into collaborators, into social circles, into private gatherings, into people who share spaces on sets, tours, and industry events, the implication becomes, if this is true, it could touch anyone. And once the audience starts believing it could touch anyone, the fear spreads faster than the facts. That's how the internet works. It doesn't wait for confirmation. It reacts to the worst-case story first. Now here's where the names part becomes the nuclear fuel. Because in this narrative, names aren't just names, they're brands. And brands don't like being mentioned in the same paragraph as allegations they didn't ask for. So even casual references can trigger the strongest possible response. Legal threats, crisis statements, and silent pressure behind the scenes. And that's why this chapter feels like the point of no return. Because once the story reaches the stage where people believe there are documents, records, private alerts, and more names still not revealed, the audience starts waiting for the next shoe to drop. They stop consuming it as a one-time rumor. They consume it like a series. And the more it feels like a series, the more it becomes monetized, clipped, reposted, and amplified. Tasha frames her own reason for speaking as moral urgency. She positions it like, this isn't fun anymore. Somebody could have been hurt. And whether you believe her or not, that framing is powerful because it shifts her from blogger with tea to whistleblower with a warning. And that's exactly the shift that makes Hollywood panic. Because if the audience buys that identity, then every pushback looks like a cover-up. So she ends the chapter with a threat that doesn't even need specifics to be effective. That there's more coming. More names, more connections, more claims, more pieces of a map that allegedly exposes not just a celebrity scandal, but a system, an industry that protects fame first and truth last. And that's why the story, at this stage, becomes bigger than the allegation itself. Because the real battle is no longer what happened. The battle becomes who controls the story. If you made it this far, don't treat this like just another viral celebrity clip and keep it moving. Because the way these stories spread can be just as damaging as the story itself. Nothing you heard here is confirmed. There's no verified diagnosis, no proven medical claim, and this is not medical advice. This is internet commentary and allegations being discussed in a general way. So the smartest move isn't panic, and it isn't blind loyalty either. The smartest move is to stay objective, separate facts from claims, and watch how fast narratives get shaped when money, fame, and reputation are on the line. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think this is real information finally being dragged into the light? Or is it messy internet storytelling designed to go viral? Drop your take in the comments. Keep it respectful, but keep it real.